Joe has called from Enfield. What can you tell us?
Hi, well, first I want to preface this by saying that my heart goes out to Dr. Newbon's family, who have suffered a devastating loss at this time. Firstly, what I want to say. And I also want to set the context of this slightly, because I think it's fair to say that this all sits against a wider context of Labour anti-Semitism,
yes,
of which, as we've already discussed, Dr. Newbon was a director of Labour against anti-Semitism. And of course, Labour had been found guilty of anti-Semitic harassment by the EHRC before this had occurred. So that was the context for Labour anti-Semitism, and of course, Jeremy Corbyn being found to be leader at the time this anti-Semitic harassment occurred. So that was the context. This was a satire, right? This image that Dr. Newbon shared, did not create, was a satire. Something that Michael Rosen himself had satirised his own bear hunt previously. In fact, on the same topic around about Labour anti-Semitism, about smears and all of this sort of stuff. So he was quite comfortable to satirise his own work in that context on the same topic. So I think that's important to understand, because it's not like his work was so precious and oriented at children that it couldn't be used for political ends. He himself had satirised this. And then we have to consider that both the gentlemen in question, Pete, Dr. Newbon, and Michael Rosen, are both Jewish.
Yeah.
So therefore it becomes almost an argument, satire, human offence between two Jewish men.
Sure.
What this doesn't require is an army, and I see it that way, a mob, harpies, whatever you want to call it, of other people against that proven factual context of satire, of proven anti-Semitism and Labour, led by Jeremy Corbyn, to then target a campaigner for anti-Semitism on spurious grounds of anti-Semitism himself. 4,000 of them plus complained to his employer. And more critically, to this very day, the same people, this 4,000 plus mob, are trolling his widow on Twitter. Every article, the Telegraph article, the Daily Mail article that has been referred to is being trolled right now with "it's a scam, he deserved it, how dare he deserved to die because he offended Michael Rosen and by extension Jeremy Corbyn, etc. Something has gone deeply wrong of the politics on the left as it's expressed on social media in this country, and I'm going for Trump, I'm going to go on across the pond as well, whereby people think it's acceptable to behave in that way as if there are no consequences in the real world. If someone has a disagreement with somebody else, I believe that it's up to their employer to give them a duty of care that when they are on the receiving end of something which is clearly a coordinated mass campaign, accidentally or not, led by two men, Jeremy Corbyn, who amplified Michael Rosen's original tweet with hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of social media followers. The university should have had a duty of care to step back and go, well, this seems a bit odd and a bit extreme and a bit unusual that, someone shared an image on Twitter that was between two Jewish men, and this seems strange. We should investigate what actually happened here.
Well, make themselves aware of the context, because I think anti-Semitism is one of those things that unless you are immersed in that world, unless you're part of the Jewish community, people hear it and they think, I want no part of that, I don't want to discuss that, I'm too scared to say the wrong thing. From an employer's point of view, if they've got all of these letters coming in with people saying your employee has been found to be anti-Semitic, without knowing the context of that, that's going to put that employee in peril, isn't it?
Well, yes, of course it is. But I think one can tell, right, that clearly this is a social media phenomenon, right?
Yeah,
because none of those individual people could have been personally had anti-Semitism directed towards them. 4,000 plus people. I mean, that's obviously improbable and ridiculous. So there has to be an awareness of the university that this is some sort of coordinated campaign, right? Because that's the only way that it's happened. In that case, the time is taken to sit down and talk to your employee. This was a bad faith, disingenuous campaign against an innocent Jewish campaigner of anti-Semitism. I have no way of looking into the heart of Jeremy Corbyn or Michael Rosen to realise if they understood the impact of calling things loathsome, anti-Semitic, and mentioning, particularly in Michael Rosen's case, when he said in his Facebook post that Dr. Newbon had withdrawn from Twitter but could be found on Facebook. I have no idea. I can't look into their hearts to know whether that they meant this to lead to the trolling that we see today against his widow, children, and his a dead man. I don't know if they meant that within their hearts, but we can look at the outcome of what happens. And I do think when we look at the online harms issue, I do believe that those people with public figures, Dr. Newbon was not a public figure in that same way. He's not, he's not on the media. I do believe that those people who have millions of followers, hundreds of thousands of followers, there needs to be some form of regulation that means that they have to be more responsible for what they tweet. Then, everyone needs to be responsible for what they tweet.
I think that's a really...
Millions of followers can clearly cause a darn sight more harm than someone who's got 50.
I think that's a really important point that you make. Thank you so much, Joe, for calling in.